Responsibility is not always a curse. Sometimes it's enriching and therapeutic for the human soul, and I think it's this realization that most of us use to travel with a smile from our childhood into our adulthood. Last Spider-Man video. For real this time.
Hey, did I mention I received a personal thank you from Spidey himself?
You mean Pete?
Yeah, no!
Alright, Spectacular Spider-Man is produced by Greg Weisman, who comes from an academic background, so his work has an immense analytical precision to it, where every character, line of dialogue, and intertextual reference isn't just decoration, but serves to build tight, dense, and patient storylines that not only last for an entire season, but they interweave in and out of the characters' personal lives.
Speedy was abducted before any of us met. You're the guy we trained beside, fought beside. You're the only you we know.
Spider-Man particularly benefits from this serialized structure for the reason that the characters by nature touches two genres, the superhero dimension and the melodrama about someone dealing with the limits of their own emotions.
I'm just no good for her.
The films often struggle attending to both because to fit within traditional narrative film structures, each adaptation had to pick and prioritize one genre over the other in order to feel well-rounded in 2 hours. It's why in both Raimi and Webb's version of the origin, Peter Parker is given a love interest before he becomes Spider-Man. It's not accurate, but it's an easy way to make the drama tighter.
Yeah, but those are the best kind.
However, the consequences of these sort of decisions often resulted in the superhero side be completely under-prioritized. Apart from Norman Osborn, every villain is forgotten in the next movie. Webb tried to fix it, but the Raimi films in particular lacked a real sense of consequence because everyone's dead.
Spider-Man will always have enemies.
The MCU films were able to strike a slightly healthier balance because it had the room. When Spidey crossed over, he could actually have a career and deal with escalating external conflicts, while in his own films, he could deal with more complex internal issues like self-esteem and trauma. But because the melodrama had to be filtered through a more tonally exaggerated tone, why did I say that? It couldn't really get too heavy. However, Spectacular Spider-Man was able to outshine all of these adaptations for the reason that Spectacular Spider-Man is 26 episodes divided into 2 seasons, with each season capturing a semester of school. Season 1 runs from September to November, and Season 2 runs from December to March.
Harry, Gwen, how'd summer treat you?
Additionally, every 3 to 4 episodes approximate a month and are often focused on individual story arcs. As a result, each season contains 4 arcs, which are spotlighted by the theming of the episode titles. The first 3 episodes are named after topics from biology, the next 3 are ones from economics, then 3 terms from chemistry, while the final 4 are topics in psychology. These are designed to complement the connotations of the villains, Lizard, Tombstone, Green Goblin, and the symbiote. While in Season 2, the villain arcs are the Master Planner, the second Venom story, the Gang War arc, and the second Green Goblin arc. This is all fine and dandy because most shows do story arcs, but what made Spectacular Spider-Man stand out was how these arcs were so rhythmically complementary to the school drama, because there's a continuous momentum to everything. As Peter Parker explained,
In nature, everything's connected. As scientists, we explore and expand upon those connections. Maybe as people, we should do the same.
this whole monologue is a metaphor for the entire show's attitude with the duality between Peter Parker and Spider-Man. For example, in episode 2, Peter Parker is tasked with tutoring Liz Allen.
Study with Petey? I don't think so.
But then, on the day he's distracted by Electro, he leaves to fight him.
Look, this tutoring thing is something you need, not me, so when you're ready to learn, let me know.
But then realizes he's a guy he knew before, and kind of feels guilty from escalating the situation.
Max's life is trashed, and not only don't I recognize him, I attack him.
Then later that episode, the distracted Peter Parker approaches Liz Allen in a disinterested way. Therefore, he suddenly seems desirable to her, and this plants the seed of their inevitable relationship several episodes later.
Thought you said this stuff was boring.
While Electro turns to crime precisely because of Spider-Man's mistake and develops into a key member of the Sinister Six. You don't really notice the reactive intricacies of this whole ordeal, but You can feel it, because not only do you have to pay attention to the causality of everything, but this bouncy quality makes both sides of Spider-Man and Peter Parker feel emotionally dynamic.
Look, I messed up before, but now I really want to help.
You want to hold my hand?
Additionally, this is a Spider-Man that is, and I repeat, not a curse or a burden. It's something raw and positive inside Peter Parker, and it gives him the ability to pursue wiser and greater rational goals that benefit him in the long term. So it's the opposite of making YouTube videos. As a result, by developing both sides of Peter Parker so extensively, the story unifies to create a pretty dramatically comprehensive study of Spider-Man's self-identity.
Spider-Man's no magic wand, but thanks to the webhead, Kurt's cured, and Billy gets his father back. So what if nobody threw a parade? Spidey stays because Spidey's needed. For now, anyway.
When Spectacular Spider-Man begins, it opens with Peter Parker coming back to school after gaining his powers over the holidays. He wants to pursue a high social status. He asks out Sally, but she's like no, and the Simp Police arrives to embarrass him. Therefore, Peter Parker is forced to go back to his craptastic life.
Are you damn it? He did.
As a result, the key concept that frames the show is self-identity. Peter Parker's ambition is out of touch with his actual life, and it causes a great amount of disappointment. Or isn't this the same theme as Spider-Man Homecoming? However, being Spider-Man is a form of emotional emancipation for him. For example, right out of the gate in episode 1, after Peter Parker's chewed out by Aunt May, Peter's love for being Spider-Man is what refuels his self-esteem.
Nothing went as planned today, but I'm still Spider-Man, and still undefeated.
As I quote from Anthony Giddens, the art of being in the now generates the self-understanding necessary to plan ahead and to construct a life trajectory which accords with the individual's inner wishes. In other words, Spider-Man is like a form of self-therapy for Peter's sense of self because it offers a sense of continuity that transcends the failures of his unmasked life. Subsequently, this idea of finding happiness and self-actualization in another identity is shared with the wider characters. Flash is a total tosspot who bullies people that are weaker than him, but deep down inside, he has a genuine respect for fairness and power that slowly manifests itself positively when he falls in love with Shashan.
Bad enough you juiced. You had to spill and ruin it for—
He didn't spill. I did. Title's meaningless if it's not won fair and square.
You did good. They'll see that.
Harry Osborn is like a total dweeb, but there's a sneaky Machiavellian part of him inherited from his father that gives him what he wants. Every character has a contradiction deep inside them that is the source of meaning, both positively and negatively. However, the antagonist, who orchestrates everything bad, is the man who delivered my copy of the Mnemonic Imagination.
Are you serious, Amazon? This cost me 50 quid.
And it's also Norman Osborn. His key mantra is,
"Don't apologize. I never do."
This not only becomes his calling card, but it's the antithesis to what Peter Parker represents. It's not about reviewing one's life to make meaning, but brute forcing it into everything else. Therefore, he stagnated himself, and his son becomes a worse person because of it.
If the job was to help her learn, at least you taught her how to fold to peer pressure.
No big. I reached out. She knocked my hand away. You can't control everything. Trick is to never stop trying.
Spectacular Spider-Man was, of course, tragically cancelled. However, the last episode is called Final Curtain, which insinuates a respectful sense of closure. The word final is literally half of it. So, how did the show end? Presumably, it galvanizes all of these storylines to create a fantastic— Nope, it ended with a cliffhanger, where Norman successfully fakes his death after revealing how long-lasting and evil his plans were.
You framed your own son?
While Harry guilts Gwen into staying with him after she and Peter had finally confessed their love for each other.
I got your messages. Was there something you wanted to tell me?
To say this all feels like a kick in the nuts would be an understatement, because all the consistent and emotional energy that the show worked so hard to nurture is cut off like a flying train. There is a slight bit of comfort that can be derived from how this miserable ending completes the themes, because even after losing everything, Peter can still find comfort, once again, in his success as a Spider-Man. The story is somewhat bookended.
I'm left with no Gwen. At least the city's safe. The Green Goblin's gone forever.
Because just like in episode 1, Peter Parker was successful in protecting the city, beating the bad guy, and finding solace in embracing his naturally positive soul. And I'm not sure about you, but I think that's kind of beautiful and poignant, because just like him, we don't know what's going to happen next, but embracing what we have is perhaps the best way to deal with it. I literally just pulled this friggin' paragraph out of my ass. Spectacular Spider-Man was obliterated when Disney brought Marvel and consolidated the television rights, so unless the viewing figures for Season 2 were amazing on Disney XD, there was no real logic in keeping a partnership with Sony, since they were the ones that owned these stories and designs. So like the breakdown of my parents' marriage, it's shared legal rights that ended up ruining my childhood. What makes this feel even more like a kick in the nuts was the fact that the creators had mapped out 65 episodes.
The original plan was to do 5 seasons of Peter in high school. Sort of take him through real time, beginning of his junior year, and over 5 seasons. By the 5th season, he'd graduate high school. And then the plan from there was to do direct-to-DVD movies of his college years. But Mary Jane and Gwen, instead of being rivals, would actually be really close friends. We were talking about introducing Mr. Negative in Season 3, and Hobgoblin, but it was always about, okay, you've got these powers, then Spider-Man takes someone down, it creates a vacuum. There's never any permanent solution to that problem. It's not like suddenly crime goes away. Plans for, again, if you think of it as the early 60s reset in 2008, my point of view was that the Fantastic Four was also in New York. This would have been before Tony Stark ever put on the suit, before Don Blake ever picked up a hammer. That Uncle Ben would have been a huge fan of, Captain America. And that up in the attic of the Parker home, there's Uncle Ben's old memorabilia, Captain America memorabilia collection, so that when Captain America got thawed out from the ice, Peter would, see him as like a connection to Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
The episode where Beast and Cyclops show up because they're the first 2 students at Xavier's school, and they think Spider-Man might be a mutant. The idea was to really think of this in terms of early days of Marvel, and we would build from there. That was the original intent. And then we were quickly disabused of the notion that we had access to any other corners of the Marvel Universe except the Spider-Man.
Spectacular Spider-Man is like the Breaking Bad of superhero media, where it's so tightly constructed that nothing is ever wasted. Every episode and every character feels like a boiling kettle that is almost about to blow out, which unfortunately never happened. But there's a special sort of greatness when something can be beautiful before it's even finished. As I quote from Paul Bettany,
"But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts."
So in conclusion, it's a good show. I like it.
You need to make sure I don't say nothing to make Shashan think I'm stupid.
Dude, ship sail.
Shut up!
Weren't you picking up the silverware?
Why? You want to eat off dirty forks? Or ow!
I'm Batman. Presumably they also would have adapted Gwen having goblin babies with Norman Osborn.